made over 100 programs in the Travels and Traditions series for public broadcasting, and the central objective and the basic approach has always been the same. There's something we want to understand, some tradition that has taken hold in the culture, and we travel around the world trying to find out what happened and why. I say we because there are many people working with me and helping me discover the answers to the questions. Steve Chen helped me understand how he and his partner invented YouTube.
When it came to actually sharing these videos, there was no way to share it. And so we just thought, well, there has to be a demand for a way to be able to upload, share these videos.
Go!
Justin Lin showed me how he makes the Fast and Furious films.
I feel like action, a lot of times, people take it for granted, and I think I try to break it down into dramatic beats.
Nothing beats these cars when they go out on the road. The way they turn. The way they flip. The way they land.
Martin Sheen gave me a better understanding of Thanksgiving and the turkey hotline.
Well, first let me say, I think this is a wonderful service you provide.
And how can I help you?
Stuffing should be stuffed inside the turkey, am I correct?
It can also be baked in a casserole dish.
Well, then we'd have to call it something else, wouldn't we?
I suppose.
If I cook it inside the turkey, is there a chance I could kill my guests? I'm not saying that's necessarily a deal breaker.
In this Travels and Traditions program, we travel around looking at the tradition of women entrepreneurs in America.
Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay?
Fine, you're doing splendidly. Speed it up a little!
I had a dream about a jacket.
By definition, an entrepreneur is someone who starts a business and takes on the risks associated with that business in the hope of making a profit, or at the very least, doing something they love and not losing too much money.
We're going to cook the sustainable roux in my pressure cooker, which I ordered off eBay and had express posted from Germany.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
I wanted to start by talking to a woman who had achieved considerable success as an entrepreneur in a field dominated by men. So I went to see Linda McMahon.
WWE is seen in over 140 countries and translated in over 25 languages.
Linda is the co-founder and former chief executive officer of World Wrestling Entertainment. She started with an idea and built it into a publicly traded global enterprise with more than 800 employees. Tell me about your business career.
Well, it was so fun building World Wrestling Entertainment with my husband, Vince. You know, taking it from starting a company, sharing a desk in the basement, to now a global company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. But today, I'm also lucky and didn't expect myself to be in a startup again. But now I'm the CEO and co-founder of a new company called Women's Leadership Live. I have two partners, Stacy Shefflin and Debbie Saviano, and we have put together this company that is aimed to train women for success, ever how they define success. Maybe they want to be a leader in their community. They want to move out of middle management to the C-suite. They want to start a business. They want to run for office. So we want to give them the tools and the support to be successful, ever how they deem that success to be.
How do you do that?
Well, the company's called Women's Leadership Live because the events are live. We have conferences, keynote speakers, panelists who will talk to our women about these different fields of success. We found that women who are mentored are more successful in business. women who have a community of support, maybe a little wind beneath their wings, are more successful. So that's what we'll be doing.
I felt that if I was going to understand the traditions around women at work, I should have a woman working with me. So I asked Linda to join me and split the work. The phrase glass ceiling is used to describe the barriers that have been set up to block the career advancement of women in business. And shattering that ceiling has become a major objective for thousands of women. To a great extent, the women who get a chance to run a major corporation are only given that opportunity once the company is in serious trouble. One study pointed out that over a 15-year period, only the companies that had a terrible return on investment turned their top job over to a woman. Instead of helping these women break through a glass ceiling, what they really did was push them onto a glass cliff.
Some examples. Marissa Mayer became the chief executive of Yahoo when it was in disastrous shape. Ann Mulcahy became the first female CEO of Xerox after its previous managers managed to rack up a debt of $17.1 billion. Face it, blowing $17 billion takes some special talent. And Mary Barra was made the president of General Motors at the moment it faced the recall scandal. One result of this rather dismal situation is that more and more women start their own businesses. And as Martha Stewart would say, that's a good thing.
Well, it looks like it's not easy to pull the data together, but appears that 224 million women are running businesses, and that's about 37% worldwide, and they range from a little bookshop in town to some giant high-tech company.
And interestingly, Burt, women manage their companies much differently in that they reinvest a larger portion of the revenue into the health and well-being of their employees. Women entrepreneurs tend to create jobs. In the United States, between 2013 and 2018, just 5 years, they are expected to create over 10 million new jobs.
I came across a Dow Jones study that said that venture-backed companies in the United States that had twice the number of women on the founding team were more successful than companies that didn't. Amazing.
Not surprising to me.
Clearly, women tend to be more reliable when it comes to matters involving money. One of my favorite examples: of all the banks and rating companies that were at the heart of the economic meltdown of 2007, not one, not a single one, was run by a woman. And that is something to think about.
Women have had a long history of entrepreneurial success in our country, and they've made it a better place to live. Let me show you a few examples. In 1875, Lydia Estes Pinkham of Lynn, Massachusetts, converted her herbal home remedies into a business by marketing her products toward women and educating them about health issues. Pinkham's vegetable compound became one of the best-known patent medicines of the 19th century.
Eventually, it became so well accepted that she was honored in a song called Lily the Pink. It was recorded by the Scaffolds, the Irish Rovers, and even Elton John.
Lily the pink, the savior of the human race. For she invented medicinal compound, most efficacious in every case.
Her herbal medication may or may not have been effective for its intended use. However, since it was available in drugstores during Prohibition and had a 40 proof alcohol content, it was extraordinarily popular.
Madam C.J. Walker was considered one of the 20th century's most successful women entrepreneurs. She started with nothing. Her parents were former slaves, and she was orphaned at the age of 7. In 1905, she created Madam Walker's Wonderful Hair Grower, a scalp conditioning and healing formula. Walker had a personal interest in the product. She suffered from a scalp ailment that caused her to lose most of her hair. She eventually expanded her business to Central America and the Caribbean. In 1917, Walker held one of the first national meetings of businesswomen in America. Walker's hard work and success created the African American hair care and cosmetics industry and built a pathway for women entrepreneurs and the African American community.
Elizabeth Arden, born Florence Nightingale Graham in Woodbridge, Ontario, moved to New York at the age of 30 in the hope of building a cosmetics company. She worked with a chemist to create a beauty cream, which was something new for the cosmetics industry.
First, I used my cleansing cream. Before starting anything, one should start out with a clean slate, as it were. I like my particular brand of cleansing cream because for my temperamental skin, it is neither too oily or too dry. And above all, it doesn't grow fuzz.
In 1912, she went to Paris, saw what was going on in makeup, and returned to New York and was the first person to introduce eye makeup to American women. She also offered the first makeovers in her Fifth Avenue salon. Arden died in 1966, but her brand remains.
Mix and match, it's fun to do. What Barbie wears is up to you. There are sweaters and skirts and slacks and shoes. There are lots of styles from which to choose.
Ruth Handler created the Barbie doll, and that was a game changer. She noticed that her daughter preferred to play with paper dolls that looked more like adults than cartoon characters. Handler and her husband Elliot had a business making and selling dollhouse furniture and toys. The company was based in their garage in Hawthorne, California, and called Mattel. Elliot didn't think the idea was very good, but Ruth believed in it and introduced Barbie at the New York Toy Fair in 1959. Barbie was her daughter's nickname. Within 5 years, Mattel became a Fortune 500 company, and Barbie, without any help from Ken, brings in more than $1 billion a year. One day in 1981, on my way to work at the ABC television studios in New York City, I noticed a teeny shop selling preserves and breakfast. So I stopped in and had a coffee and tasted the preserves. I was so impressed with the stuff that I made their story a segment for the evening news. Since then, Sarabeth has become a worldwide success. How'd you get started?
At that time in my life, things weren't really fantastic. I was divorced with the kids, not really knowing what I wanted to do, not really happy being in the insurance business, and life wasn't really great. And my brother came to New York to visit, and we went to see my aunt. So we sat there, we were having our tea. We look at the table, and my brother says to Ruth, "Oh, Ruth, if only there were a jar of marmalade on the table. We love that marmalade." When we said to Ruth that we missed the marmalade, she turned around and she said, "Here's a pencil and a piece of paper. I want you to go shopping and buy this, 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 and this." My brother and I were like, "We don't believe this. We're going to learn to make the marmalade?"
At this point, Sarabeth believed it was a secret recipe that her French grandmother made in the basement, and no one was allowed to watch it.
So I said to Ruth, "Ruth, you know how to make the marmalade?" She said, "Of course I know how to make the marmalade. You think her hiding down in the basement prevented me? I bought her everything she needed. I knew exactly how many oranges to buy, exactly how much a 5-pound bag of sugar minus 1 cup. Why minus 1 cup? Because in those days, during the Depression, especially when she was raising her children, sugar was such an expensive commodity that she felt wasteful. So she would take out the 1 cup of sugar and put it on the table in the kitchen. So when she had her tea, she had her sugar. And then a year or two later, in comes into my life is my Bill. And Bill was a contractor. and he and his partner were involved with the opening of a small cafe. And I had, over that period of time, made the marmalade a few times, so there was always a jar in my house. And I said, you know, I think I should make this marmalade for the opening of the cafe. He tasted it. He couldn't believe how delicious it was. And so I made the marmalade. Well, lo and behold, Gail Green from New York Magazine got word of this marmalade. Next thing you knew, they wanted to know where you could buy it. I was making it in the kitchen at home for about 6 months. And then we started to look for a space. And we found the space on Amsterdam Avenue where you met me. And we opened a little bakery. I'm not a baker by training and schooling from a professional standpoint. I didn't go to the culinary, but what I did was I hired fabulous people who knew more than me.
When Sarabeth was fact-checking her first book, she called Ruth's grandson and discovered a completely different story. The recipe did not come from her French grandmother.
Since 1981, I'm thinking that this recipe came from Paris. 200-year-old recipe coveted in the bosom of grand-mère. It turns out that grand-mère received the recipe in the Bronx. And it was a friend of hers who made the marmalade. And it was during the Depression. And her friend gave her the recipe and told her, this is a very special marmalade. As you know, you've eaten my marmalade. You must never give the recipe to anybody. And you can only make it when and if you cannot afford to feed your children. You can go out and make this marmalade and sell it. But it got passed to me, a person who had to feed their children, didn't know anything about the inheritance of this recipe. So here I was, receiving this recipe at the most miserable, broke time in my life, that I got this gift. You know, if you have a special recipe, maybe for a very special bonbon, or a wonderful spaghetti sauce, or any kind of sweet confection, you know what? You too might make a business out of it.
The Bigelow Tea Company was founded by Cindy Bigelow's grandmother, Ruth Campbell Bigelow. Cindy is the third generation to run the business. She's competing against the big guys, but she has become the world leader in specialty teas.
So how did the company get started?
She had originally started her own interior design company, Ruth Campbell Design, and was very successful. And when the Depression hit, her and her husband, my grandfather, David Eustace Bigelow, lost their jobs, and she wanted to get in business for herself and something for her whole family. She did not feel there was a good tea in this country.
How did she come up with the formula?
She actually, her and a friend had found this colonial recipe that was actually made in crocks. And she was very intrigued by it because at that point there was obviously only plain black tea. And she really did invent the specialty tea, spiced tea business in this country. And she commercialized it.
What made Constant Comment special? What was the taste element?
It's a secret recipe, believe it or not, so I really can't share that with you or not be good. It's created by putting together oranges and sweet spices, and that's actually blended first. And my parents are the only ones. They go in there in their little lab coats, they blend the mix, true story, and then it ages for a certain amount of time, and then they'll blend it with the tea, and they'll tumble that, and that ages for a certain amount of time, and then Constant Comment is ready a couple months later. She started in specialty shops. That's where I mean, first of all, let's just be honest, it barely made it. She had it in a few shops in Connecticut. It wasn't selling. They tried to hire a salesman. After a very short period of time, he said, I can't do this. There's not enough sale. I have to feed my family. And so she found one store that it was actually selling in, and when she went to visit that store owner, these when it wasn't even specialty shops or grocery. These were these little small mom and pop stores. And he said, well, somebody smelled it and liked it and they bought all the containers. So she went back and she created what she called a whiffing jar. She put it in the case, instructing anyone that would buy a case to put the whiffing jar out, and that's how it slowly built business. So we went from these mom and pops to eventually getting into specialty, because if you remember, her background as a designer, so she would design gorgeous packaging and gorgeous invitations to drink the product and gorgeous marketing pieces. So it started in Bloomingdale's and Bergdorf, and then from there, obviously that was a very small business. For Bergdorf, it was decent for my family. They then decided it was time to try to get it into grocery, and that was a whole nother experience, but they did. They got into grocery stores.
Tell me about the introduction of the foil pack.
My father's real invention, he was actually at the University of Hawaii, and they were serving Bigelow tea in baskets, just empty or naked tea bags. And he just thought, oh, this isn't really very sanitary. And he came back and he started to think about it, and he had seen equipment in Japan that could overwrap, and he started to work with the Japanese to come up with this overwrap, and we were the first ones to come up with this foil overwrap to protect it. And today, we still protect all our bags with that foil, because if we don't, air escapes, or air gets in, or light escapes, light gets in, smell, odors. You have to protect that tea. So we produce 1.7 billion bags in foil today. What's interesting is knowing that my grandmother started it, my mother and father ran it and passed the baton in 2005 for me. I try to keep her spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit, in everything that I do today, working with the company and the employees. We're very focused on them, but it's also ensuring we're constantly reinventing ourselves. I mean, yes, we're in the tea business, but where do we need to be taking the tea business, and how do we get creative, and what are the things we need to be doing today that my parents or my grandmother didn't think about? So it's a real gift to own a family company. It really is a jewel, and I thank my grandmother, I thank my parents. I'm very, very blessed to be able to do what I do every day.
Smart companies are watching this trend, and they understand that the billion women coming into the economy are going to be critical to success. And if they don't pay attention to them, they're going to be out of business.
Well, for instance, Coca-Cola anticipates that by the year 2020, they will have 5 million women in their supply chain. But it's really very interesting, Burt, because women today are looking more and more at entrepreneurship and starting businesses on their own if they feel that their career path is stunted or blocked.
Makes perfectly good sense. Appreciate me or I'm going someplace else.
Right.
It's like that in marriage, too, you know. Entrepreneurial activity creates growth and prosperity and solutions for social problems. Today's trends show that women will be a driving force of entrepreneurial growth in the future.
One of the results of the increased use of technology in business is the development of the virtual office. Today, the virtual office allows women entrepreneurs to better balance work and family. More and more online startups are based at home or in small offices close to home. These businesses involve web design, app development, virtual assistants, healthcare, accounting, fashion, and marketing. When it comes to women entrepreneurs, the game is just getting started.
For Travels and Traditions, I'm Burt Wolf.
And I'm Linda McMahon.
Whenever we edit one of our programs, we always end up with more good material than we can fit in. Interviews, stories, recipes. So we decided to put them on our website, burtwolf.com.
I had a dream about a jacket.
By definition, an entrepreneur is someone who starts a business and takes on the risks associated with that business in the hope of making a profit, or at the very least, doing something they love and not losing too much money.
We're going to cook the sustainable roux in my pressure cooker, which I ordered off eBay and had express posted from Germany.
Yes.
Stuffing should be stuffed inside the turkey. Am I correct?
It can also be baked in a casserole dish.
Well, then we'd have to call it something else, wouldn't we?
I suppose.
If I cook it inside the turkey, is there a chance I could kill my guests? I'm not saying that's necessarily a deal breaker.
In this Travels and Traditions program, we travel around looking at the tradition of women entrepreneurs in America.
Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay?
Fine, you're doing splendidly. Speed it up a little!
That's beautiful.
I wanted to start by talking to a woman who had achieved considerable success as an entrepreneur in a field dominated by men. So I went to see Linda McMahon.
WWE is seen in over 140 countries and translated in over 25 languages.
Linda is the co-founder and former chief executive officer of World Wrestling Entertainment. She started with an idea and built it into a publicly traded global enterprise with more than 800 employees. Tell me about your business career.
Well, it was so fun building World Wrestling Entertainment with my husband, Vince. You know, taking it from starting a company, sharing a desk in the basement.
We've made over 100 programs in the Travels and Traditions series for public broadcasting, and the central objective and the basic approach has always been the same. There's something we want to understand, some tradition that has taken hold in the culture, and we travel around the world trying to find out what happened and why. I say we because there are many people working with me and helping me discover the answers to the questions. Steve Chen helped me understand how he and his partner invented YouTube.
When it came to actually sharing these videos, there was no way to share it. And so we just thought, well, there has to be a demand for a way to be able to upload, share these videos.
Go! Justin Lin showed me how he makes the Fast and Furious films.
I feel like action a lot of times people take it for granted, and I think I try to break it down into dramatic beats.
Nothing beats these cars when they go out on the road. The way they turn. The way they flip. The way they land.
Martin Sheen gave me a better understanding of Thanksgiving and the turkey hotline.
Well, first let me say, I think this is a wonderful service you provide.
And how